Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler with another episode of That Annuity Show, and I want to welcome our regular hosts, Ramsey, Will, Mark. Gentlemen, how are you?
Terrific. Nice to be back.
Hey, it's great. Listen, we're recording this after a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Weather was awesome, and what better way to kick off a short week with a terrific conversation with somebody who has some amazingly interesting topics and insight to share with us across across many different parts of the annuity industry. But Ramsey, I'll let you introduce Michelle.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Paul. So we're very lucky today to be joined by Michelle Richter from Milliman. I can tell you, over the many years that I worked, in my previous job at Goldman Sachs, we interacted with Milliman a lot. Sometimes as a client, sometimes as a competitor, but no matter how you sliced it, Milliman has been one of the most important voices in the insurance space in the last 10 or 15 years from the consulting side. So Michelle, what we'd love to sort of start things out is for those members of our audience that aren't as familiar with you, and more importantly, aren't as familiar with what Milliman does, can you give us a brief intro about, what you're doing, and specifically, Milliman's role in the insurance industry?
Sure. So I'll thank you first for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am an avid listener. Think it's a really interesting podcast, and so I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you guys. Milliman is a leading global actuarial consultancy. We serve proudly the vast majority of the insurance industry, both in this country and internationally. We consider ourselves experts in the fields in which we serve. We, like I said, primarily serve as actuarial consultants, although I myself am not an actuary. And we do record keeping. We do asset management. As an organization, we aim to serve what is mainly a base of insurance company clients in order to connect the client base that they have with the solutions that they need. We seek to serve them in every way we can find to connect Americans with the kind of services that we think are so desperately needed, especially right now. I personally focus on the retirement space quite a bit. My background is very corporate and a little bit distanced from the real world of the client experience as well as the agent's experience. So being in this very institutional environment in which I live, I do try to spend a lot of time getting in touch with where I used to be in touch with distribution directly. I've spent a lot of time in my past building products, programs, and integrative frameworks for bringing insurance and investments together. I've done that at New York Life Insurance Company and now at Milliman, where we have an objective of, again, just serving in the sense that from a retirement perspective in the United States, I think we all have an awareness that there's an undersaving challenge that has occurred, and we now all have to figure out what to do about the best way in which to help Americans resolve these challenges.
Let's talk about some of those ways. So you publish prolifically on LinkedIn and in other venues. You've spoken about the Secure Act. You have spoken about simpler retirement products. So those are a lot of things where, you and I have connected on. So tell us about, what you see as the priorities in the near term in terms of accomplishing some of the goals around the trends you think are important in this industry.
Yeah. I believe in annuities. I believe in risk pooling. I believe that not enough Americans do it responsibly. I believe that a lot needs to be done in order to help build the bridges between what used to be an investment-oriented kind of world into one that includes wealth management, which is different from asset management. And you and I, Ramsey, have discussed that a bunch on LinkedIn too, right? That as we get to a place where the baby boomers are about to retire, the important thing for all of us to be thinking about is income, or rather, it's not just asset accumulation. It's the perspective of goal attainment for the consumer, right? It's not the institutional lens of how to manage an asset, but rather how to help a consumer get what it is that they need. And annuities, I mean, anybody who's listening to this show, I don't have to tell you, you know already, annuities form a really important part of how to get retirement security for Americans. And that's not to say that annuities are a panacea, just that they are an important aspect of a holistic planning-oriented set of solutions for what people need in retirement.
So I've got a couple questions there. Let me focus specifically on one, which is really around the Secure Act. So on this show, we talked a lot about the Secure Act going into the end of last year and the beginning of this year. We all think it's been very important. I know you have, but a lot has happened in the last 6 months to sort of made it fade into the background, because the more pressing issue has been issues around quarantine of COVID-19 and the economic backdrop. Tell us now where do you think the Secure Act, or the impact the Secure Act is now, sort of 5 or 6 months later?
Yeah.
And where you think it'll be a year or two down the road as we start to see the world return to something approaching normal?
Great questions. I think, there's some opportunity by, the horrible situation caused by COVID. I want to recognize that first before saying, secondly, that I think it gives the industry some opportunity while dealing with COVID to prepare better for, or to continue preparing for Secure, which passed unexpectedly at the end of last year from a timing perspective. I think everybody had hoped that it would pass, but weren't per se expecting that to occur in December. So it was a big win for the insurance industry, and I think a big win for Americans as well. The way that we see it is that, as COVID plays out, and hopefully it does as little devastation both to human life and to our economy as possible, Secure re-enters the background, as does Reg BI, by the way. But so where we're thinking with respect to Secure is that we hope that more plans come to see that there could be utility in having in-plan income. As it stands right now, the vast majority of defined contribution plans not only don't include annuities, but don't even include a systematic payout plan from them. So that's concerning. There's a lot of work that needs to be done from a record-keeping perspective, from a middleware perspective, and a lot of other things in order to enable in-plan annuities under the Secure Act. So I think about that. And then I also think about all of the other impacts of the Secure Act that if I'm an agent listening to this call, I'm thinking about, the ways in which that creates opportunity for me, as I'm thinking about smaller retirement plans, and MEPing the changes of the laws related to that. Perhaps this kind of slowdown in COVID-oriented work for prospecting gives all of us the opportunity to think about our strategic plan for when we reopen. And maybe that for some of the agents and advisors that are on this podcast, maybe that provides an opportunity for some of the smaller plans needing and wanting annuities, but having felt prior to Secure that the safe harbor provisions didn't permit them to do so.
So I want to take this opportunity to open up for questions from Paul, Will, and Mark, because everything you said there sort of speaks to some of the things we talked about in the pregame.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot a lot of threads to pull there, Michelle. I guess one is, and I wrote this down, which I think is I think pretty interesting, which is, we've kind of shifted to a world in financial planning where it's more about goal attainment for consumers. And what's my goal? I mean, some of these may be financial, some of these may not be, or the financials are connected with them. Secure Act, as Ramsey said, we were excited about it. It was great. Those goals, when I think about the goals then, we were saying, listen, goals are, how do we put more, even sock more away from retirement? Today, and it's interesting, like my conversations with people have been, how do I take money out of my 401k? How do I make emergency withdrawals? And we've been saying, stop. There's some other better ways to do this. How do you think this is going to reshape the landscape? And is it 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
It depends a lot on how hard people who know better go out there and try to make the changes that we think need to be made. So in particular, I hear you bringing up the concern about being able to withdraw easily from our retirement savings accounts with forgiveness, and that's really concerning. I worry about the future of America with that. I really like some of the work I've seen, for example, from Jack Twarnicki, American Retirement Association. He has a lot of really good research out there about how to prevent leakage. So for plan sponsors that are thinking about that, or even for agents who are thinking about that, some of Jack's work is really insightful about how to save the retirements of Americans with different proposals.
Interesting. Well, if I'm talking to Ramsey, who's considering doing this, and I'm saying, oh man, think about these. Stop before you do this. Okay, and I may have a few of my facts not quite right. Will, so or Ramsey can help me, or Michelle, you can. But if I take money out of my 401k, take a loan, I think I've got a 5-year provision, if I'm not mistaken, before I have to repay it before I get hit with a penalty. But for me, the biggest concern there is not the payback, but I'm out of the market for a huge amount of time, right?
Right.
And how much, what's the right way to talk to a client about, to express and say, you actually, if this was your goal to retire Paul at age whatever, 62, 63, you have an 80% probability by taking that little bit of money out, you've missed the upturn, and you've now pushed your date out 3 years.
There's been a lot of studies done on that how impactful even taking loans from your retirement, your retirement funds are over long term, because just think about the undulations in the market and the lack of participation you'll have. So, and I wanted to touch on something Michelle mentioned as well. We're as a society, we're task driven. We get to a point we want to accumulate a certain amount. You hear quite often people say, I need whatever the figure is, that's not important, but I need X amount of dollars in my, in my account so I can retire.
What's my number? What's your number, right?
Yeah, well, you hear it. People throw numbers around like you need this, or you need, based on a withdrawal factor or whatever. But Michelle raised a really good point I wanted to revisit is how do we change that conversation or that paradigm to one of accumulation to one of the importance of income, the importance of income streams, and the importance of current longevities. So folks recognize that, it's one thing to accumulate during your working years, but how smartly you need to then translate that accumulation value into some level of income stream. Michelle, where do you see that going, and how do we, as an industry, do a better job of getting that message out?
It's a great question. It's the question of the century. It's so important. So we have a number of different ways that we're trying to help do that. And one of them is through the Alliance for Lifetime Income. And Milliman has provided the RISE score as a frameworking methodology to the Alliance for Lifetime Income. And we are a founding member of that organization. And we see it as an important set of tools now available to advisors. First, the campaign was geared towards consumers. But very recently, it's become the case that the goals of the Alliance have expanded to help advisors too. So what you can find on the website that's available to advisors is Milliman's tool that we named the RISE score, that works like a credit score methodology. And it helps people to understand how retirement ready they are for their income phase of life. And you can see how by adding or subtracting annuities from the equation, you can increase or decrease the score. More than 100,000 proposals have been run so far. And the website is protectedincome.org. That's the retail website. And for advisors who want to go to the website and get branded materials, and when I said advisors, I should have said financial professionals, who would like to get branded materials, can go to the website, protectedincome.org, go to the financial advisor section of that, and you can find all kinds of neat stuff available on that website. And it includes things like, maybe I can even show you on my webcam, like Maslow's hierarchy in terms of marketing pieces. Nope, it doesn't really work. Go to the website, check it out. The advisors can brand their own materials, and there's consumer presentations. There's like all kinds of stuff that makes it easier to explain the value proposition of annuities in the context of well-being. Right, not just about the fact that I'm really big on proving the mathematical optimal solution, as are people in my field. But at the same time, I also would like to recognize that even Harry Markowitz, who invented modern portfolio theory, points out that his thesis wasn't intended towards consumers, that he imagined the investing institution of his thesis as the mutual fund company, which makes asset management a very different lens from wealth management, right? So asset management being about the institutional lens of how to manage the asset, where wealth management is about the consumer as the lens, right, and how to help them achieve their goals. And so I've taken a very long-winded way of answering your question, which is one way in which Milliman aims to be hopeful in this regard is by providing to the Alliance that RISE score that helps consumers, or it could help consumers to understand their retirement readiness. And we also do our best to help the Alliance, which has now created a pretty formidable presence for the insurance industry that never had one before. The investment industry has done a great job of promoting its products and its imaging with Americans, and the insurance industry has unfortunately not been so fortunate in terms of consumer perception of the benefits that it provides. Now, if you ask consumers directly about how much they enjoy this via or the immediate annuity that they've purchased, they'll tell you how much they love it. But if you ask them about those kinds of products before they own it, they don't like it so much.
Right.
So it's really about trying to change the messaging and help people to connect with what really helps them.
Yeah, people really see the benefit of insurance when they receive the death. It's the death benefit check. It's the income check. And we've talked about the organization before. And I'm just on protectedincome.org, and I see the promotion for the Stones. And there's looks like a great video with the manager of the Stones, and he says, "My job is to eliminate risk." Right. I think that's a big mind shift. I mean, Michelle, where's the future of distribution going? If you were to put money on a type of an advisor who really does what we're discussing, creates an enormous amount of protected income, okay, for a community, what's that model looking like? Who's really good? Who's going to be good at this?
Ooh, great question. And I think the answer is really different today from where it'll be 10 years from now, which is probably different from where it'll be 20 years from now. And if you're like me and you enjoy insurance industry jokes, then you'll say that's about the right timing in our space, but because we're a conservative kind of space. But But, I'm really curious to see, I'm watching the Reg BI fights with a close eye. We'll see the XYPN legislation or dispute come into court on the 2nd, I think. So I'm watching that with bated breath. Because I think that'll have a big impact on how we see the wirehouse model evolve. But from my perspective, lifetime income happens, from people who understand annuities. I'm very hopeful that fiduciaries, those who have worked as RIAs in the past or that now desire that their business model be that, I'm really hopeful to build those connections between the annuity industry and that world, which just haven't historically existed for all kinds of reasons. They're technological, they're regulatory, they're product design, although the product design part has evolved substantially. I hear a lot of people saying, and I can't tell you that I'm certain this is the case, but I can tell you based on where I spend my hours, what it is that I think, right? I've heard a lot of people say that they think that in the next 3 to 4 years, something like 30% of annuity distribution will occur in a fiduciary fashion, as in with a no load product in the retail arena. And I've seen that both from a distribution company that indicated that kind of number. You've seen that from an insurance manufacturer that indicated that kind of number. And you've also heard that from the investment banking community that desires to purchase insurance blocks. So those are the kinds of people that are telling me that they believe trends of that variety. Further, so that's with respect to the retail space. I think we'll see some more significant minority, and I'll continue to emphasize that, minority of the annuity space being a fiduciary oriented one in the 5 to 10 year arena. As this is what people are telling me. I can't know that for sure.
Interesting. So we'll double click onto that a little bit. Isn't it a little more? I've got a question for Mark on that. So I imagine I'm an independent annuity advisor. I had my Series 6, maybe I had my Series 7, 10 years ago. I let it go. I focused on FIAs. Given what you're seeing today, and I hear fiduciary, I think, okay, should I get my securities license back and start, and start to sell some and be prepared to sell some registered products or should I set up my own independent RIA or IIR and really start to build a practice and have an annuity sort of tuck into that practice? Where should I take my practice over the next 5 years?
I think where you should take your practice in the next 5 years depends on what your priority system is, right? If you would prefer to start first with values orientation and you're the type that prefers to work from the RIA mindset, then you might consider affiliation with a third-party source that polices on your behalf, and that can do so both for registered and fixed products. Because that's one available method to you if you desire to go down a fiduciary oriented path. If you desire to work down a commission oriented path, the buffered annuities, structured annuities, that type of annuity are very popular in the moment. I wouldn't be surprised to see that continue to be the case. So for those who are thinking about from a product perspective, and they want to sell those as opposed to advise upon them, then re-getting your 6 or 7 might make sense. But I do encourage everyone to begin from the perspective of like, how do you want to work? How does your client base perceive you? What's the least shift from how you like to do business? And then from there, I can find for you a number of different ways in which you can appropriately, honestly, earnestly do business.
So, Mark, I wanted to ask you about that. Are you seeing some green shoots in this direction? Obviously, there's the COVID slowdown, but if you sort of normalize things and took that out, are we starting to see some green shoots in this direction that we've been talking about?
Yeah, we really are. And what's interesting is there's a convergence of so many things taking place right now. You've got, the average insurance agent almost at age 60, and Michelle references that actually in one of her articles. And, part of that has to do with, insurance manufacturers moving away from the career agency system. So I think the educational part is critical, but you've also got a lot of folks that have built the wealth with their clients over the years that are looking now to shift over to the more RIA platform to really truly manage the holistic approach of that wealth. And I think the key now is education, really educating on annuity products, finding the right balance of product structure and incorporating that into that, because at the same time, you've got baby boomers really in the throes of retirement. You've got the challenge of defined benefit plans, going by the wayside, defined contribution plans being the onus of the individual. And how do you put a guarantee behind that? So I think the critical part now is educating and bringing in kind of the new generation of agent and advisor and really incorporating them into one. So we're definitely seeing the more experienced, larger book of business advisors, I would say, moving to that platform. But you also have the individuals that are now coming out of college that, are laden with debt, and they're, how do they start their careers in terms of building this up from a pure commission-based standpoint. So I think it's a tough balance, and I think education is the underlying key in terms of really kind of incorporating what's most important out there for these individuals.
Cool. All right, so I think we're getting sort of towards the edge of our time limit. Wanted to find out a couple of things. So one, any closing comments, Michelle? And two, want to make sure you tell us about this piece you recently published about female advisors. I found it very intriguing, and hope that you'll come back on a future show and talk about it.
I'd be delighted to. Well, I share Mark's perspective, having grown up in a career agency system. I published on that too, by the way, Mark, and we're in agreement. I'm concerned about how the youth comes into this business, and how do we educate the next generation, and that really does tie into the piece that Ramsey was talking about. My perspective is that women have a very important role to play in the financial advice system of the future. I think that we could, as an industry, be doing more to assist women in finding the career path of financial advice. I think there is a need, as we both have discussed, the quantity of advisors who are going to be retiring in the next several years, the amount of money that's moving, the skill sets that women have, the predominance of financial planning in our future, all speak to the qualities that women tend to espouse. And we speak in a piece that Ramsey just mentioned. Some colleagues of mine at Milliman and I promoted, we wrote and then promoted starting Friday, actually, so he just picked this up rather fast, started promoting this piece that we intend to be part of a more extensive dialogue that we hope to be helpful in catalyzing regarding the need to bring women into this industry, how good we are at it, and how helpful we could be if we were there. So, from the Secure Act's perspective, I did want to add one other piece, which is that work that my firm is doing related to helping those plans and those agents who serve plans who felt in the past concerned that they didn't have safe harbor services. We are collaborating with other experts in our field to offer services of that variety, where we can be helpful to provide those plans with the kind of security that they need in order to feel that they can offer annuities in plan. It's really important for annuities to be everywhere. All Americans working with whichever form of financial advisor they work with deserve to have access to protected income in their portfolios. Annuities are no panacea for America's undersaving challenge, but they're a so important part of portfolio construction and ongoing financial planning that I think that the work that you guys do and that your listeners do to help Americans connect with annuities it's God's work, in my opinion. And I hope that people continue down that path. It's very important. Risk pooling, very important.
Thanks so much,
Great.
Michelle. And I'll just very quickly before I turn it back over to you, Paul, on that initiative, you're talking about helping companies figure out how to incorporate in a post-Secure Act world, how to incorporate annuities into their 401k from a compliance and other perspectives. Yeah, it's Milliman, but everything I'm seeing, Michelle, is you're the point of that spear. So the key thing is people should call you if they want to do something there. So again, thank you very much for that.
Hey, Michelle, thank you for coming on our show. This is just terrific to get a little bit of your insight and wisdom. Ramsey, Will, Mark, thanks so much.
Just let me throw in there, Michelle, I want to echo the sentiment. A lot of substance in this show in a brief amount of time. It opened up, potential dialogues further down many paths. So I do think that it would be worthwhile to have you back in the future, because I agree with you. Currently, right now, we have, the Secure Act and other things have been eclipsed by the, kind of the what's at our forefront right now, which we're all sensitive to. But I think more broadly and longer term that we need to continue this conversation and make sure that folks understand the importance of income and the importance that annuities can play in their retirement planning.
I concur. I'd be delighted to be back. And I'd like to point out to you gentlemen that you now have this recording and it's your job to promote it. So go educate people, please.
All right.
And I will be back to help continue the educational efforts.
Excellent. All right. Excellent. Hey, listen, thanks everybody. And listen, tune in next week for another good episode of That Annuity Show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.